Welcome to the Calder Farmstead.
Now the Ice Hawks back out to center in transition. Carlson with Quenneville 2-on-1. Right with Carlson, Quenneville scores!
Here's a chance for Herrick. Fighting scores! Off the face-off! Up it's Eminger. Pulled back to Werenski. Has it, shoots one, bounces off a man. 5 seconds left. Werenski, another jam on the shot, turning and firing. They go! They score! They score! Now they catch each other and they both go right over the top. Matching rights to one another. McCormick gets the helmet off of Cassie.
And now, with 9 minutes gone in overtime, the Bears breaking out right side with Bear. Looks like cutting to the net. Bear will score!
And here are your hosts, Cece and Sean.
Hello and greetings from the Mile High city of Denver, Colorado. Welcome to the Calder Farmstead podcast, episode number 105 for Friday, June 10th, 2022. If you're hoping for a podcast detailing the agricultural exports of Jamaica, we are not going to be much help. This is American Hockey League podcast, and my name is Cece Hockley, the AHL editor of Full Press Hockey. And as always, we thank you for tuning into the Calder Farmstead. And when I say we thank you, of course, I mean the royal we, because you may have noticed that Sean is not here, and I am mostly flying solo this episode. We do have some guests to bring on to discuss both the Eastern and Western Conference Finals of the AHL, of course, but I'll be flying solo for the intro and the outro here. I know Sean liked to put out rumors and speculation as to my whereabouts when I've been absent from the farmstead. Well, I heard a rumor that Shawnee Boy is off to invest in a rum outfit down in the Caribbean Sea. Take that for what you will. If you're new to hearing what usually Sean and I talk about hockey, we're going to recap some of the playoff matchups from the past week or so for you. We both watch a lot of AHL games and are going to talk about what we see when we watch the film when you normally tune in when we're both here, as well as use some advanced stats to help break it down. If that's new to you, you might want to head over to our podcast feed or channel, wherever you're listening to us from, and check out episode 0. It's a short primer on some stats we normally talk about and how we view what's important on the ice. So if you're new to some of the more advanced hockey stats terms like PDO or the point shares model, or newer hockey terms like controlled zone entries, go check that out so you'll be better to pick up what we're putting down. I promise it isn't that technical or nerdy, and it's only about 20 minutes. And let's be honest, you wasted 20 minutes watching and rewatching a video about a private chef in the Hamptons drinking Diet Coke at 7 a.m. And if that's oddly specific to you, mind your business. You'll never get that time back. So next time, why not spend a little more time with us talking hockey? All right, before we dive into the finals previews, let's get some quick news and transactions out of the way. Now, the Cleveland Monsters announced a new head coach in Trent Vogelhuber. Vogelhuber played parts of 7 AHL seasons with Springfield, Lake Erie, the former name of the Cleveland Monsters, the Lake Erie Monsters, and San Antonio. Rest in peace, Rampage. 267 games played at the AHL level. The past 4 seasons, he has served as an assistant coach for the Monsters. That's been since 2019. So he takes over for an exiting Mike Eves. All right, time to talk about transactions. It is that time of year. Even though we're getting into the twilight of the playoffs, teams are starting to announce signings. And that also means that players are going to be departing overseas to play in Europe. So let's get started. We'll cover June and May. It shouldn't take too long, so hang with us. June 9th, Gabriel Dumont, the captain and centerman for the Syracuse Crunch, signing a 2-year AHL contract with Syracuse. That's his first AHL deal. Actually, he's always signed two-way contracts at the NHL level. Riley McKay, forward, and defenseman Cliff Watson, some depth signings, returning to the Rockford IceHogs, signing 1-year AHL contract extensions, and Mitchell Weeks coming in from the Sudbury Wolves of the OHL, the 20-year-old signing a 2-year AHL contract. And Evan Fitzpatrick signing a 1-year AHL contract with the Charlotte Checkers. And that will, the goaltender, re-upping with the organization, the Florida Panthers organization. That'll do it for June 9th. June 8th, Joachim Blichfeld, formerly of the San Jose Barracuda, signing with the Vaxholm Lakers HC in the Swedish Hockey League. June 7th, Josef Kozanash played for Tucson last year. He is heading over to HC Sparta Praha in Czechia. Tyler Lewington, defenseman, AHL Bruins, the Providence Bruins. He is going over to the ICE, the Ice HL. He's going to sign with EC Red Bull Salzburg. So Josef Kozanash, a goaltender, Tyler Lewington, both heading overseas on June 7th. June 6th, Otto Sompi, forward for the Syracuse Crunch this past season, heading over to Rauman Luko in Liga next year. Luke Kavalin, goaltender, played the OHL with the Flint Firebirds, heading over to the AHL, signing with the AHL, one-year contract with the Toronto Marlies. June 2nd, Una Kapanen, forward, one-year, two-way deal with the Boston Bruins. Possibly see him in Providence next year. June 1st, Cal Rosen, defenseman, two-year, two-way deal with St. Louis, played with both the Blues and is currently playing with the Springfield Thunderbirds now that the Blues have been eliminated from the AHL playoffs. Yuno Luoto, forward, one-year, two-way deal with Columbus. He last played in the AHL with Manitoba in 2021, coming back to the North America Pro Game. May 31st, Ronald Knott, a defenseman, one-year, two-way deal with Arizona, 27 years old, has not played a single game of North American Pro Hockey. May 30th, Felix Bebo from the Bridgeport Islanders announced his retirement. He's going to become a coach in the QMJHL. May 26th, Chris Wilkie, forward for the Belleville Sens this past season. He's heading over to Germany in the DEL to play with the Beitigheim Steelers. Ostap Safin, forward for the Condors this past year. HC Sparta Praha in Czechia. Another guy heading over there. Two guys that are joining the Hershey Bears. One of them, Bear Hughes. Bear Hughes becoming a Hershey Bear, coming over from the WHL and the Spokane Chiefs. He signed a one-year AHL deal. Benton Moss from Minnesota State University, Mankato. He also signed a one-year deal with Hershey on May 26th. Juuso Riikola played with the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins this past season. He signed a deal with IK Oskarshamn in the Swedish Hockey League. Brian Lashoff got an extension, essentially. He signed an AHL contract with the Grand Rapids Griffins after being under contract with the Detroit Red Wings the previous season. CJ Mott, goaltender, returning to North American Pro Hockey, coming over from the Coventry Blaze of the IEHL in Great Britain. He is coming back to join the Iowa Wild. Last but not least, Taylor Fadoon, defenseman, two-year, two-way contract with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Again, very well could see him with Wilkes-Barre Scranton. May 24th, Hayden Verbeek, forward, Grand Rapids Griffins, last season. This coming season, HK Spitska Nova Ves in Slovakia. Lucas Elvenis, forward, had a lot of a falling out with Vegas, and then signed with Anaheim on waivers. He played with San Diego, played with the Gulls. He's heading over to HV71 in the Swedish Hockey League for next year. Lastly, Ivan Prosvitov, goaltender, played with Tucson last year. He signed a one-year, two-way extension with the Arizona Coyotes. You got to think that is a show-me deal. May 23rd, Linus Sandin, forward, one-year, two-way extension with the Philadelphia Flyers. Could see him in Lehigh Valley. May 22nd, Stephen Comfer, defenseman, one-year, two-way contract with Detroit. He played in the KHL last season, and the 2 seasons prior, he played with both Boston and Providence. May 21st, Tara Hirose, forward, two-year, two-way contract extension with the Detroit Red Wings. Such an integral part of the Grand Rapids Griffins. May 20th, Maxim Sushko. There we go. Forward, Lehigh Valley Phantoms this past season. Not anymore. He signed a deal with HC Dynamo Moscow in the KHL. He'll be playing over there in 2022-23. All right, we got a few more left. May 18th, Philip Berglin, defenseman for the Condors this season. He's heading over to the Swedish Hockey League. He's going to play with Orebro Hockey in the Swedish Hockey League. May 17th, Brooklyn Kalmakov, playing for the Moncton Wildcats in Major Juniors. He's signed an AHL deal, one-year AHL deal with Wilkes-Barre Scranton. May 12th, Antti Suomela, Played for the Toronto Marlies, the forward did. He's heading over to the Swedish Hockey League. He's going to also play with IK Oskarshamn. May 11th, Sven Berchi, forward for the Henderson Silver Knights this year. He is going over to the Swiss National League with SC Bern. 3-year deal. So he's going to be over there for a while, unless unforeseen circumstances terminate that contract. Artyom Sarakov, defenseman for the Chicago Wolves. On May 11th, his contract was terminated. Standard player contract, terminated. May 9th, Max McCormick, forward, played mostly with Charlotte this year. 2-year, two-way deal with Seattle. He will more than likely play for the newly minted Coachella Valley Firebirds in 2022-23. Last and arguably least, Christoph Herbeek, forward for the San Jose Barracuda, suspended because reasons. He is heading over to Czechia, HC Skoda Plzen. I don't know how to speak Czech, so forgive me, but good riddance to Mr. Herbeek from the AHL. All right, my first guest is jumping on to discuss the Eastern Conference Finals between the Springfield Thunderbirds and the Laval Rocket. We are in the thick of the Eastern Conference Finals out there. He is a staff writer for the Hockey Writers, covering the Montreal Canadiens. He also freelances for Recruits Hockey, covering both Montreal and, of course, their AHL affiliate, the Laval Rocket. And last but definitely not least, he co-hosts a podcast that I've been a guest on myself, Habs Unfiltered. Welcome to the farmstead, Blain Potvin. How are you, bud?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. How'd I do on that name pronunciation, by the way?
Pretty close.
Like 8 out of 10, 8.5?
Yeah, thereabouts.
Okay. I appreciate you giving me a little pity point. It was probably a good 7.
I can't really be too harsh because my wife can't even say the name.
Wow. Okay.
She's pretty Anglo.
Well, yeah, I'm as am I. Western United States kid, growing up in, the Rocky Mountain states. So I appreciate your graciousness. But Blaine, yeah. Last time I was on Habs Unfiltered, we were talking about Arturi Lehkonen coming over to the Colorado Avalanche. Kind of working out for the Avs, I would say.
I think so. A little bit.
Little bit. Good stick, Lecky. Definitely coming through in the clutch there in Game 4 against Edmonton. The sweep in the Western Conference Finals. Definitely something you don't see every year when you get to the conference finals phase. But I digress because this is an AHL podcast, and we are here to talk about the Laval Rocket and how they're doing against the Springfield Thunderbirds. And so with that in mind, let's go over a quick run through of the first 3 games that have been played so far. We're recording this on a Thursday. Both game 3s coming in on a Wednesday, and so Thursday kind of a little respite for the teams, and gives us an opportunity to talk and record. But anyway, Game 1, Saturday, June 4th at Springfield. Thunderbirds in overtime, 2-1 over Laval. Game 2, Sunday, June 5th, back-to-back games to start out this series at Springfield as well. Laval rebounding, 4-2 victory over Springfield. And Game 3, jumping over to Laval, Quebec, Wednesday, June 8th in Laval, like I mentioned. Springfield, 6 goals to Laval's 3, and the Thunderbirds are leading the series 2-1. Obviously, that 6th spot getting put on the Rocket. My normal co-host, Sean O'Brien, he is on vacation. He is on his honeymoon, the last full day of his honeymoon. He's in Jamaica. Yeah, totally jealous right now. But he said that he would have put in Kevin Poulin in Game 2. What are your thoughts on that? No?
No. None of the losses so far could be pointed towards goaltending.
Okay.
Primo, despite the 6th spot that got put up on him, none of those goals were there's the empty net goal at the end, but
right.
None of the goals that he allowed were really bananas. It wasn't something that, he made a mistake and they took advantage of it. It's just they just kept coming in waves, and they were attacking the net. They were wreaking havoc in the slot, and they were just overpowering Laval's defense in that game. I mean, without Primo in net that game, it could have been 10, maybe even 12-3. He made that big of a difference.
Yeah, I mean, he was great. He's been great in the postseason. And, you know, he's definitely been okay in the first couple games, obviously. I mean, and that's the thing, like looking at the game sheet back over again, I'm like, when would you pull him? Because the goals were so spread apart. It's like, it wasn't like he got, you know, 2, 3, 4 goals ran against him in a span of 5 minutes or something like that. It wasn't like he just completely crapped the bed or something. So
no.
Yeah.
No, and there was a couple of points during that game 3, where Laval went down to a 5-on-3 penalty kill.
Right.
They were outnumbered 5-on-3, not once, but twice within a few minutes span. And Primo shut the door. So, and he was their best penalty killer because he stopped everything that came out.
Yeah.
He was determined not to let in that goal. And it was a little early on, and that could have made the difference had the defense not kind of quit on him.
That segues pretty well. I was going to ask this later on in our line of questioning here, but you mentioned the power play, and it's no power play goals from either team. 3 games in, and we have not seen a power play goal from either team. You know, Springfield went 0 for 3 in game 1, 0 for 4 in game 2, 0 for 8 in game 3. Like you mentioned, those 5-on-3s really stacking up that total there. Laval, of course, again, with no power play goals, it means the Rocket were fruitless as well. 0 for 1 in game 1, 0 for 3 in game 2, 0 for 4 in game 3. So special teams was something that we kind of highlighted in one of our preview episodes for this series. How does Laval remedy kind of their power play woes here? I mean, obviously it's great the penalty kills, you know, putting the kibosh down on Springfield's power play, but Laval, their power play, how do they remedy that and get that clicking?
They got to give Ylonen a little bit more space, a little bit more time.
Mm-hmm.
They put Joshua Roy in the lineup in game 3. He didn't get any power play time, but those two together would probably work well, as Roy is a playmaker and Ylonen's got that excellent shot.
Yes, he does.
Then you put someone in front of the net like a Gignac or a Belzile, and then you're looking at something that's a little bit more dangerous than what they've been putting out there so far.
And, you know, Ylonen really thrived on the power play under, you know, the previous head coach. Why am I JF Houle is the current head coach, but why am I forgetting? He went to San Diego.
Joël Bouchard.
Say again?
Joël Bouchard.
Thank you, Bouchard. Yes, I'm like, it's why am I forgetting his name? I mean, we talk about him enough on the podcast, but yeah, I guess the Denver heat is getting to me today. It's 90 degrees Fahrenheit today, or pretty close. So
it's the altitude.
It's the altitude too. There you go. I spent a little while in San Antonio, came back. My mind's still adjusting. I'll use that excuse. So Joël Bouchard, yeah, I mean, he thrived under the power play with Joël Bouchard in charge. And so obviously a season full of adjustments and everything, but Ylonen, you know, coming in, yeah, if he can get clicking on the power play, there'll be a few goals in the back of the net for sure. Yeah. Blain, I'm gonna pivot over to Springfield a little bit, but it's not gonna be it'll still tie in Laval, so don't worry. But one of our keys to success was the McEachern, Joshua, and Bitten line continuing to shine for Springfield. We said if the Thunderbirds were going to win this series, that line was going to continue to produce. And boy, have they. I mean, Bitten scoring 4 goals in game 3, 4 of the 6 of Springfield's goals. That certainly ticks that box. But I tell you, a big surprise has been Sam Anas. And we also mentioned that, just him to continue clicking and everything. It was actually our first key to Laval winning the series was to contain Anas. He has no points in 3 games. I had to check that again on the AHL.com. He had 13 points in his first 6 playoff games this year. Wow. How is Laval doing this? How are they pinching the production of Sammy the Greek?
In watching the games, what they've been doing is they've given him a shadow. And it's been shared amongst a couple of the veterans. So Belzile's one of them. Paquette's another. And they've been putting them on him. And they've been making sure if they get that last change like they did in game 3, they're trying to get Schooneman out there when he's out there. So they're doing matchups, and they're shadowing him as best they can, and it seems to be working. However, it opens up space for others such as Will Bitton and Joshua, who doesn't put up a lot of points, but he's been a wrecking ball in this series.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter what sport it's in, whether you're double teaming a wide receiver with a couple of cornerbacks in football, or you're giving a couple guys on the basketball court, to the superstar player, Steph Curry, he's in the finals, you double team him behind the 3-point line or something like that, because he can make a 3-point shot from anywhere. It doesn't matter if you commit a guy or two guys to one guy all the time, then there's going to be, those points of weakness that open up. There's going to be those opportunities for other players to step up. And obviously Will Bitton, like we mentioned, the 4 goals last game, he's definitely stepped up, and, Springfield looks to have the momentum here, but yeah, let's again segue that to another point I wanted to make: net front defense. So that was the X factor that we talked about previously, again, in the series preview. Net front defense. We said that whoever controls the net front defense really is going to control the flow of the series. And, again, checking back on the shot charts, it really shows some adjustment from Laval from game 1 to game 2. That was the most noticeable one I saw. In game 1, they were forced to take a lot of shots from the left wing side, outside of that home plate area. The Thunderbirds really clamped down in front on that defensive scheme. Game 2, however, the Rockets seemed to break through. They shot half as many shots. It was 42-26. Half as many shots from game 1 to game 2, but they converted 4 goals instead of just 1 that they had in that game 1. Game 3 was kind of another barrage of 40 plus shots. They had 3 goals to show for it, but obviously when you get a 6 spot put on you, that's not going to make a difference, unfortunately. Long intro to a short question, Blaine. Who is better, or who has been consistently better, rather, at playing defense in front of their netminders?
In this series, it is not Laval. They did have that one game where they kept the forwards to the outside a little bit, but like real estate, location. Right. You get into that spot, you're going to score a lot more goals than you normally would. And that's been the big issue for Laval in this series. You mentioned Will Bitton, that one game where he got the 4 goals, all of them, except for the empty netter, were, including his 4 goals, were all within 5 feet of the net.
Right.
So if you don't clear that area, they're going to score.
And that's something I noticed from both Springfield and Laval, Blaine, is that you've got a lot of net front goals from both sides. I think really the only one that stuck out to me that wasn't a net front goal was the overtime winner in game 1. It was taken from not quite the blue line, but definitely closer to there than the face-off dots. So, but yeah, I mean, the net front defense, like we predicted, it's going to be a crucial thing moving forward as we face, game 4 on Friday, June 10th, 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time at Laval. And to kind of conclude here, Blaine, who needs to step up for the Rocket? I mean, let me phrase it this way. Who has stepped up for the Rocket that has kind of surprised you up to this point, and who needs to in order for the Rocket to move on to the Calder Cup finals?
Well, I'm not really surprised by the people who have stepped up. They're the ones you'd expect. Yalonen, he has stepped up his game. Paquette's been a leader. Wallet's been a leader. But the one person that's kind of disappointed me through this series so far has been Dello. I've been hoping to see more from him. Laval needs that depth in their defense to really make a difference, because if they don't, the secondary scoring from Springfield is going to kill them.
In your unbiased opinion, do you think Laval pushes this series to 6 or 7 games?
They've got the team that could. It all rests on game 4. If they can win game 4, I see a 7-game series. They lose game 4. Springfield is a team that they're a bunch of sharks. They smell blood in the water. They're going for it. So it really rests on this next game. Even though the next two are in Laval, this next one's really the pivotal game.
I wish you had like a Viewmaster to look into my brain, because a few questions ago when you mentioned Yolanen for the first time, like my mind went there. And just now when you made that shark analogy with the blood in the water, my mind went there too. I'm all like, there's no way I can prove this, but it's super crazy how like we're on the same wavelength here.
Great minds think alike.
It's very true. It's very true. So do simple minds, but we won't go there.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, I mean, this series, I mean, I knew it was going to go back and forth. I even kind of predicted, I'm like, this is going to go the distance. Like, this is really, yeah, this could push to 6 or 7 games. I don't know if Sean said it on the program before, but he took Laval. We've had private conversations where he's like, even in round 1, he's like, I like the Rocket. He's like, Laval looks so good. And so, yeah, I mean, if Primo can, you know, continue to be as steady as he has, again, even, and if the defense can do him a favor and, you know, shore that up in front of the net. Yeah, this and game 4, it all hangs on this Friday. So those need to tune in on AHL TV, because that's going to be appointment TV right there.
If there's a coach that can pull it off, it's JF Hoy. He's done an excellent job so far this season with a rotating cast of players. So having a little bit of a steady presence there now, he should be able to pull it off. Yeah.
A curious point, and I know that, you know, being in the same province as your NHL parent club or state, if you're here down in the United States, it's super beneficial. I've seen it here with the Avalanche and the Eagles. You know, obviously the Eagles have put together a great AHL team, you know, with the people that they have, and the Avalanche could rely on a Kiefer Sherwood or a Dylan Sekura or even a defensive, you know, when they had Justin Barron, you know, there's a little tie in there. When they had Justin Barron, they could go pull him or Jacob McDonald on defense. But, you know, also having an ECHL club, I think that's beneficial too, because they have all 3 in one province. And I guess this is kind of more of a off the cuff question to kind of wrap this up, Blain. But do you feel that Laval has benefited from both having their NHL and now their ECHL club with Trois-Rivières and the Lions there? Has there been a benefit from coming in from both sides there?
I think so. I mean, it's made it much easier to get players to go up and down. Trois-Rivières is only 150 kilometers away, so about 100 miles, just under 100 miles. So they're not far. Laval is just on the North Island from Montreal, so it's a 20-minute metro ride. It's not very far. So they can share coaching staffs, they can share video staff. They could Laval and Montréal, they share the training facilities in Brassard, so they have that advantage.
Yeah, and I mean, just the way the Quebecois have, you know, rallied around just all 3 teams. I mean, it's just it's super fun to see. I mean, and I'm sure, obviously, being Habs Unfiltered and seeing the benefit of having Montreal, Laval, and Trois-Rivières all in the same province and everything like that. I mean, it's kind of it's the ECHL, it's not a big deal. But I really think, you know, being able to pull those depth guys and not have to, like, I know covering the Idaho Steelheads for a couple seasons and the AHL teams from Stockton and from Bakersfield having to reach to Boise because that's the westernmost ECHL team is in Idaho. So like to have to do that with a guy for, you know, 2 or 3 games, to have a guy right there, I mean, that's super beneficial.
Yeah, and it's definitely benefited Laval having players moving back and forth from Trois-Rivières, like Avampato. He's moved up several times. So, and Poulin, he started the season in Trois-Rivières, and now I think he's an excellent mentor, and I expect him to be back next year for Primo.
I mean, he was our goaltender of the year on the Calder Farmstead Awards show because of how well he performed in the sample size that he did this year. Like, it was super impressive just coming in and doing as well as he did. You know, I believe Primo was called up for most of the season to Montreal.
Yeah, without Poulin, they don't make the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I have nothing else to say. That's perfect. So, Blain, thank you so much for coming on the show. Again, Game 4 tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time in Laval. Must win for Laval, according to Mr. Potvin there. And so, Blain, where can the people find your work if they are not familiar already with your work?
Well, as you mentioned at the top of the show, you can find my work at the Hockey Writers. I also freelance with recruits. I do a little bit of scouting with the Hockey Writers as well. So there's some NHL entry draft work that's coming out now. You can find me on Twitter at Blain Potvin _THW. Same thing with Instagram. Habs Unfiltered is pretty much ubiquitous on all the platforms.
Right. All righty. Well, thank you so much for all things Montreal. The man rocket hits himself, the lion of all things Habs, Blain Potvin. Thank you so much for coming on the Calder Farmstead, Blain. And if Laval makes it to the finals, we will be seeing you again very soon.
Looking forward to it.
All righty. Thanks, bud. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Special thanks once again to Blain Potvin for coming on the Calder Farmstead to talk about the Laval Rocket and their series, trailing 2-1 currently to the Springfield Thunderbirds. My second and final guest for the episode, she appeared on the program all the way back on episode 103 while I was on vacation. So this is her first time with me, second time on the program. She's done a lot of covering the sport of hockey, covered the Chicago Blackhawks and the Rockford Ice Hogs, as well as some CWHL teams as a freelance reporter from 2014 to 2016. She's been the managing editor for SB Nation's Jewels from the Crown, covering the Los Angeles Kings and the Ontario Reign from 2016 to 2020. She's written articles as a beat reporter for USA Hockey. She's still covering the Kings rather as a podcast host and producer for Locked on Kings, and has done that for almost 3 years now. And since 2019, she's also been a beat reporter for the Chicago Wolves for Inside AHL Hockey, Knights on Ice, and now Canes Country, and hence why she's on the program. We've got Stockton and Chicago to talk about the Western Conference Final. Welcome back to the Farmstead, Sarah Avampato. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Glad to be here. It does not feel like I've been covering hockey that long, but here we are. Like, oh man, that's it's been a while.
I just finished up my 5th season covering minor league hockey, so I get
Goes
you.
fast.
I'm like, really?
Mhm.
2017? Yeah, it
Surprise.
does go fast. Surprise! All right. Well, I think before we get started, I think I'm contractually obligated on the show to mention, and I'm sure maybe Sean's touched base with you a little bit, my co-host Sean O'Brien, but you are a Penn State alum as well.
I am.
Yeah. So
Only when I went there, they didn't really have a hockey program. They had the club hockey program, and of course, many years after I left, the Pagulas just threw money at them and got them a real arena. And when I was there, it was like, go to this literal barn in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, and go yell at WVU. That was what we did, and now they have a real team. So
it's amazing. Arizona State was in the same position. When I was a kid growing up in Colorado Springs, Colorado College played in the original Broadmoor World Arena, which was originally back in the 30s a equestrian track. It was a horse outdoor barn that they covered and then made this barracks style roof. They tore it down in 94. I think I caught one of the last games played there, a playoff game against Western Michigan when I was 7. But I mean, that little old barn had some charm. So
charm.
Exactly. Well, let's kind of break down these past 3 games, just score wise. So game 1 between Stockton and Chicago, Saturday, Friday, June 3rd at the Allstate Arena in Rosemont, Illinois. Chicago 5, Stockton 4 in a bit of a hoot in overtime. Quite a bit of a back and forth affair. Quite a punch counter punch sort of game. Game 2, Monday, June 6th, also in Rosemont. Chicago hosting. Chicago winning it in the final moments. We'll get to that. 3-2. Last minute, last 30 seconds, last 20 seconds goal. And game 3, Wednesday, June 8th at Stockton, shifting the series, giving a little travel time to go back. Well, to go to California for the first time in this series. Chicago blanking the Heat, the Wolves blanking the Heat 3-0. And as we all predicted, like I said before the show started, the Wolves with a commanding 3-0 lead in this series. And yeah, I mean, I guess we'll start with that. I mean, did you see this coming, Sarah?
No, not at, like, to be honest, also covering the Kings in the rain, it means that I have seen a ton of Stockton this year because of watching the Pacific Division and the AHL. This is the first time the Wolves have played them, so they're new to Stockton, but I saw way too much of them in the regular season and saw them just, the Reign were one of the top teams too, and just saw them struggle. I legitimately was kind of concerned coming into this series. Stockton had the league title wrapped up until literally their last game when they lost. The Wolves won. Wolves, just snuck in there with the title for the league. I thought this was going to be, and they have been very close games. I think that you're seeing a 3-0 lead, but like you said, one game in overtime, a 1-goal game, that 3-0 shutout. One of those was an empty net goal. Like, it was much closer than it looked, but never in a million years would I have said this series, the Wolves would be on the brink of potentially moving on to the next round in game 4. No, not at all.
And I, covering the Colorado Eagles, I had the same surprise when Stockton just boat raced them 5-0, made the neutral zone sludge. A little foreshadowing there, but Colorado, Kiefer Sherwood, Dylan Sekura, Jordan Gross, Mikhail Maltsev, this high-powered offense that had so much depth, and Stockton blanked them not once, not twice, but 3 times. And 2 of those games were a 1-0 victory. So, I mean, again, a close effort. The third game was an anomaly. It was a goal fest. I think 6-5 in overtime. But yeah, I get it. Coming into the Colorado Stockton series, I'm like, I did not expect Stockton to be so dominant. And, Mitch Love earning that Coach of the Year award. And Sean compared him to Bill Belichick in the fact that we're going to take away your calling card. We're going to take what makes you you, and we're going to have you try and win this game a different way, in some different way. And so it's very comparable to that. But let's get to the first key in our series preview. Let's move on to that. So our first key for the Wolves to win this series was their depth scoring showing up. So you had Josh Levo, he had a 2-goal game in game 1. And like I mentioned, kind of foreshadows a little bit the breakaway last minute, 17 seconds left in game 2. Just a complete backbreaker against Stockton there. Jalen Chatfield, Ivan Lodnia, and Swedish rookie Noel Gunther have all contributed goals in the last 3 games. And the last player that Sean mentioned that needed to find the score sheet in our preview episode, the last depth player, Jamison Reese. He sure did with that overtime winner in game 2. And it may seem like a silly question, Sarah, but has Chicago's depth really overpowered this Stockton defense?
I don't know if that I would say overpowered, but I think that it makes it difficult for Stockton because, I mean, okay, fine. Maybe Andrew Podorowski hasn't gotten as many points as maybe you would have expected. Stefan Nason still has 1 billion goals. Josh Levo has 1 billion goals. Like, they're kind of sort of shutting down. They haven't had hat tricks every game, but it's making it harder because, okay, now you have Gunler contributing, you have Reese contributing, you have these bottom lines. Richard Panik, I think, got a goal the other day. Vasily Ponomarev hasn't gotten a goal yet, but he's been really active in setting up plays. It's making it hard for them to know who's dangerous, if every line can actually contribute something. And so it's like, okay, at one point I remember a shift where it's like literally every guy was on Josh Levo. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a great strategy, but there's all these other guys out there. So it's making it really hard, I think, for Stockton to pick and choose who they need to care most about. I was looking earlier, and of all of the skaters who have skated for the Wolves in this series, in the playoffs total, there's only one guy who hasn't registered a point. And it was Cal Marino, who played 2 games, mostly there to just like punch Milwaukee and Rockford, which is his role. He's fine with it.
I was going to say that's what Cal Marino does.
Right, that's what he's there for. And he gets it. He did get to play on the power play at one point in a game because they were that much ahead. Ryan Wasowski was like, just throw him out there, see what happens.
How about it, bud?
Trying to get him his first career AHL goal. But yeah, he's the only person who hasn't recorded a point. Every other player, defenseman, forward, has at least 1 point in the playoffs. I feel like the goalies don't have points yet, but time will tell.
I mean, yeah. Get Alex Lyon a helper or an empty net goal. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me at this point. But it reminds me a lot of Sam Annis. You're familiar with him, of course, with his days playing in Iowa. But 13 points in his first 6 playoff games this postseason. Laval has held him to 0. None. He has contributed no goals, no assists. Yeah. But it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Laval, double teaming him, triple teaming him, and they're leaving guys like Will Bitton open, who scored 4 goals in game 3, leading Springfield to that 6-3 victory. That's the thing. Whatever your sport you're covering, I was telling Blain this too. Whatever sport, if you double team a guy, it's going to leave another opportunity. Yeah. And so, that makes sense that Stockton would have that. And speaking of, you mentioned Marino on the power play. Let's talk special teams a little bit here, Sarah. A key that Sean mentioned to Stockton taking this series was the special teams boost. The power play needed to step up for the Heat more than it did against Bakersfield in Colorado, and the penalty kill needed to harken back to the regular season where it clocked in first in the AHL at around a 92% kill rate. And all I have to say is oof, because the Wolves went 3 for 3 on the power play in game 1. The Heat went 0 for 4 on the power play. Chicago went 1 for 4 on the man advantage in game 2. Stockton, 0 for 2. Both teams fruitless on the power play in game 3. Chicago was 0 for 4. Stockton was 0 for 5. But Chicago's got the power play and the penalty kill clicking. What have they done? What is the key to that success in the Western Conference Final here?
So I think, the key to their power play success, and it's always funny when I tweet about this or write about this because Hurricanes fans are like, you mean that you're allowed to do that? Because they have such good puck movement on their power play. You can watch Stockton's guys fall for the fakes. You can watch them, all shift to one side of the ice, leaving, someone like Stefan Nason available. You have players who fit that kind of power forward model. Nason always goes right to the net. Podorowski goes behind the net and gets it out to what's going to happen if you watch their power play enough. And it just seems like Stockton hasn't been able to figure it out, or, they figure out, okay, this is the play that's going to happen. But again, they leave it open for something else. And it's been interesting because, like you said, in this last game, 3-0 win for the Wolves, power play, nothing on 4 times. At one point they had a 5-on-3 penalty kill they had to get through, and they nailed that, which was very frustrating for Stockton, kind of shifted the momentum there. But I know that if I were to talk to Ryan Wasowski after that game in Stockton, he probably would have been really frustrated with the power play because you had 4 chances and you got nothing. They obviously won the game anyway, but he's so interesting to talk to because he's such a stickler for that kind of detail of, sure, we won the game, but they've been close games, and those power play goals can make all the difference. So I know that he's going to want to see them click more, but yeah, for the power play, it's really just been that puck movement. They're just relentless. And same with the penalty kill. We're seeing guys step up and make huge blocks. I'm seeing players, lay out on the ice, even more so than you do in the regular season. These guys every game are leaving it out there and just absolutely shutting Stockton down.
Reminds me a little bit of Dennis Gilbert with Colorado. You're familiar with him. I know you are. He would sell out 110% on the PK. And when he got hurt and he was missing the postseason, Colorado's PK suffered for sure. I mean, they still played that power kill style play, but when you have a guy like Dennis Gilbert, that defensive defenseman pairing, very sorely missed. But I digress. So speaking of the Pacific Division, back to Stockton, I can attest firsthand, once again, Stockton made the neutral zone sludge. when they played Colorado. That was part of their success. They were shut out. The Eagles were in game 1 of the divisional finals, 5-0. Like I mentioned, Dustin Wolf had 3 shutouts against the Eagles. And like I said, a couple of those games were 1-0 affairs, but Colorado had not been shut out since November of 2019.
Wow.
Yeah. And then they get shut out 3 times in 4 games. It's like, I'm like, that's why I'm so baffled that, Chicago is, and the good teams find a way to win those close games. That's the thing. Chicago has been so good, but I take it the Heat aren't having as much success in clogging the neutral zone as they did against Colorado.
Yes and no. I would say not quite as much success, but game 2, I think, was a really good example of the Wolves finding themselves in a very different position than what they're used to. Game 2, the Wolves were outshot. It was the first time since like the end of the regular season that they were outshot by another team. Every other game in the playoffs, they had, except for there were 2 games where they had like a 1-shot margin, but like there's a game where they outshot Rockford by 33. Like shots were 49-16 in one of their games. So they're very accustomed.
Like a Chicago game. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'm pretty sure there were also like 5 fights, which also a Rockford Chicago game.
That checks out. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. But so I think that Stockton is, they're finding ways to frustrate the Wolves, but the Wolves have just been able to push past it. There has been a lot of that neutral zone play, but the Wolves have also been able to take advantage of miscues in the neutral zone. They've been able to fight for pucks up against the boards. So Stockton's trying to keep play there. They're trying to make it so the Wolves can't, get out. But we're seeing a lot of, take a hit to make a play kind of stuff happening. And, it just takes one. I think the Jack Drury goal where he scored 17 seconds in was a great example of that, of, thought the puck was going to stay in. It didn't. They managed to chip it out to Drury. He was just off to the races. And that all kind of developed out of a play in the neutral zone.
Man, I tell you, Sean and I mentioned Adam Ruzicka coming back and needing to make an impact. And he only played in game 1 in the goal fest that was the 5-4 loss for Stockton in that first game of the series. And he's been out the past 2 games. Addressing that, focusing a bit on Stockton here, do you feel like the Heat, and you said these have been close games, but like the close, the overtime loss in game 1, the goal with, 18 seconds left by Levo on that breakaway, do you felt like maybe Stockton was coming into game 3 a little bit demoralized?
I thought that, and then, I wasn't really sure what to expect, because this is a team that hasn't faced adversity all playoffs. They haven't been in a situation where they've been down in a series. And so, either you think they're going to come out on fire or they're going to come out like blah. And, to their credit, the first period of game 3 for them, they outshot the Wolves 10-5. The Wolves spent long stretches in that game, in that period, without getting a shot on goal. And so if anything, I would think that first period where Stockton couldn't get on the board despite dominating a large majority of that period, I think that might have been the point for them of being like, oh crap, because the second period, Wolves turned it around. They got on the board, they outshot Stockton the rest of the way in that game. And so if anything, it might have been that first period of we did everything we could, we thought, and we couldn't score. We couldn't beat them at their own game.
Yeah. And here we are, game 4 coming up on Friday, June 10th, 7 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. You got to stay up a little later over there in Chicago.
So late.
I mean, so you're used to it, though. You cover the rain, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
And the kids. So,
it's nothing, but man, it's been nice being all the games in my same time zone, and 10:30 at night and I'm done. The first game went to overtime and I was like, oh, they better finish this quick. I'm so tired.
There was an overtime game I was covering up in Loveland, and I'm like, oh, this better not go too late, because it was a weeknight. And I'm like, oh gosh. So
one of the very first Wolves games I covered, it was back the first year that they were Vegas' affiliate. It was a playoff series against Rockford, went into 3 overtimes. and it was a weeknight, and I had to stay there the whole time to cover the game, and they ended up losing, which meant that they were eliminated. So it's like, I'm not going to get good quotes from anyone anyway. It was a very surreal experience.
Yeah. When those games go deep into overtime, yeah, it's a different world. All bets are off, and it's just, all right, grab your coffee cup.
Yeah.
Here we go. But
sneak some candy in your bag. That game, though, prepared me in the playoffs to always have snacks in my bag.
There you go. Yeah, I've fallen trap to that too.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, grab an extra cookie from catering. Totally. Yeah, I get that. I get that because I had to be prepared for a few games myself. Yeah. So you mentioned, the shutout and trying to get a puck past Alex Lyon. So this is super, maybe not funny is the right word, but it's interesting to me. So I grew up, and perhaps you did too, in an era where you rode one goaltender through the postseason unless an injury popped up. And here in the conference finals, the teams that have alternated goalies, both Springfield and Chicago, are currently leading their respective series for what it's worth. I don't know, whatever, if you want to read the tea leaves that way, but Springfield started Joe Hofer in games 1 and 3, Charlie Lindgren in game 2, Chicago starting Alex Lyon in games 1 and 3, and Peter Kochetkov in game 2. And I knew the Lyon acquisition by Chicago was big this offseason. I'm like, oh man, that's a great veteran goaltender that they got. But Sarah, how's his performance, including that game 3 shutout, been? Like, how high has that been on the list of reasons Chicago's up 3-0 in this series?
Yeah, it's definitely, aside from the fact that we're getting scoring when they need to get scoring, the goaltending has been at times what is keeping them in some of these games. These have been, like we keep saying, they're very close games. Both goaltenders have had to make ridiculous saves through a lot of traffic. There have definitely been periods where you're watching it and you're like, this would have been 3-0 already if it weren't for Alex Lyon, if it weren't for Kochetkov. It has been, very important for this team to know that they have two guys back there they can rely on. And especially Stockton, they are a much faster team than Rockford and Milwaukee. So the speed has given the Wolves problems at times. And knowing, you don't want a guy to get past your defense. You don't want that to happen. But if it does, they have pretty good confidence that their goaltenders are going to be able to deal with it. And I think that's making a huge difference.
Yeah, and what a revelation for Kochetkov to come in after Makaniemi got injured, because Makaniemi was doing great.
Yeah.
I think I checked his stats. He had like a .922 save percentage and, had only lost like 1 or 2 games.
Yeah.
And like to have Kochetkov come in and to be that second goaltender in lieu of Makaniemi, it's like, talk about spoiled for riches. The Wolves are always spoiled for riches. I feel like it's just
yeah.
But yeah, that's been huge for them. And so game 4 coming up on Friday. Closing thoughts here. What do the Wolves have to do to close this out on the road, potentially the last game at the Stockton Arena with the Heat moving to Calgary next year? At least last AHL game. Who knows what that arena holds, minor pro hockey wise.
Yeah.
It was an ECHL market. Maybe it will be again. Who knows? But game 4 coming up. What's it going to take for the Wolves to sweep this series?
I think they just need to keep doing what they've been doing, with the caveat of they need to keep doing what they were doing in like periods 2 and 3 of that last game and not period 1.
Right.
And historically this season, the Wolves have kind of slow starts every so often. And, they've managed to generally survive it. And the goaltender holds them in it until the players all get their legs under them. But, I think that they especially need that penalty kill to keep going because they do just keep taking dumb penalties that they don't necessarily need to. I know there's always questions about officiating of like on both sides of, was that really a trip? Was that really a cross check? Okay. But, I think that penalty kill needs to stay strong. I think whoever is in net, like I said, they have total confidence in both of those guys back there. So I'm not really worried. Both of them have let in goals that have been kind of ugly, and they've both bounced right back from it. And so that's not really a concern. And they just need to keep finding ways to get those scoring players free. The biggest problem that I've seen in these past few games is Stockton does a really good job of recognizing passes from the Wolves, picking them off, getting in shooting lanes. And it's something that, after game 2, I talked with Ryan Warsofsky about it. I talked with Josh Levo about it, and they all recognize it. They all know what's happening. Mm-hmm. And for them, it's just, we need to keep playing our game. We need to find ways to get past them and to basically okay, you're going to do it to us. We're going to do it to you. And just to play a tight game. But I think they know what adjustments they need to make because we've seen it happen as the games go on. So I hate the hockey cliche, but they're so right we just need to keep playing our game, because every time they get sucked into, playing, Milwaukee wants to punch each other. Okay, great. That's when games start to go awry, whenever you get dragged into whatever shenanigans the other team wants from you. So they, all of those guys in that room, there's so many people who have, Andrew Podorowski won the last Calder Cup with Charlotte, which is basically Wolves 1.0 kind of. So there's guys in that room who have been the whole way, who have won, who know what it takes. And I think that for a group that has a lot of young players, they're going to be really important to help keep everyone on an even keel. And Ryan Warsofsky's great at that, at just keeping that room chill. Just get through this game, get through tonight. We'll see what happens tomorrow.
A little bit of an unscripted question here. So
yes.
My first minor pro hockey experience when I was a kid was watching the Utah Grizzlies in the IHL. So I've been familiar with the Chicago Wolves since their IHL days, and they've always been, pun very much intended, a lone wolf when it comes to, I mean, they're an independent team.
Yeah.
Their affiliations have run the gamut. I mean, even in the past 5 years, you've had Vegas for a few years, and then in the COVID season, you had both Nashville and Carolina, and then you just had Carolina this year. From your perspective, covering the Wolves over the past 5 seasons, like you have, Rockford and the Wolves, I mean, what has been the common thread, the common denominator that has kept the Wolves, even with the changing affiliations, that has kept the Wolves one of the premier AHL franchises, both on and off the ice?
I think that a big thing is that they managed to kind of blend what you expect talent level wise from, if you're used to going to NHL games, versus, we know that, love it or not, minor league hockey, a lot of the big draw is people are going to punch each other. It's going to be hard, heavy hitting hockey. Like, that is a draw for minor hockey.
Right.
And the Wolves historically, no matter who their affiliation has been with, no matter who's running the show, have usually managed to have a very good blend of skilled players, skilled goaltenders, guys who go on to NHL careers, but they also aren't afraid to mix it up. And at least current day, the way that the AHL divisions are all set up, it breeds those rivalries. They played Milwaukee 12 times. They play Rockford 14 times or something. So you see the same teams. You start to develop that hate for each other. And I think that has been a big part of it. They have always been generally a very successful team in terms of the standings, but they also deliver on that entertainment value that is so important to get butts in seats for AHL teams. I always, a lot of people complain Allstate Arena is probably too big for minor league hockey. It just, it's full on the school day games where they bus in 12,000 kids from across the Chicago area.
Right.
But that's bless those children, but it is so loud when you go, because there's just 12,000 screaming children the whole game. But it is you would love to see it more packed. You'd love to see more butts in seats there, but they also, right now, NHL team in Chicago, not so entertaining. So they've also managed to be able to, I think, have a good draw there, because people aren't going to drive out. Rockford's a pretty long drive. If you're a fan in Chicago and you want to see hockey, but you don't want to pay Blackhawks prices for it, you're not driving 90 minutes plus out to Rockford. You're going to drive up to Rosemont. Yeah. And
you're getting a better product in Rosemont anyway.
Yeah. Rockford has one prospect. Sorry, Rockford.
Sorry, Rockford. Would his name be Arvid Soderblom?
Him and Lucas Reichel.
Lucas Reichel. How could I forget Mr.
That's
Reichel?
about it, though.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rockford.
Talking about rivalries, covering that at Host Steelheads for a couple years. They had the Alaska Aces there in the ECHL for a long time until they folded. And of course, they've got Utah. They've got that Boise Salt Lake rivalry going on there. And, Utah going through, again, the IHL into the AHL for a few seasons and then going to the ECHL. Their stadium hosted the Olympic hockey for the 2002 Salt Lake City Olympic Games. So you want to talk about a big stadium?
Yeah.
The Maverick Center, it's got 10,000 seats in it for an ECHL club. I think it's one of the biggest stadiums for ECHL hockey. Amway Arena in Orlando, they have Orlando Magic basketball and Orlando Solar Bears hockey. So, I mean, it's crazy, but I mean, again, when you're a hot ticket and you're doing well and you're a good alternative to the Blackhawks, why not?
Yeah,
why not?
And the past two games at home have been some of the loudest crowds I've ever heard there. And this team went on a cup run just a couple years ago, but people are really feeling it this year. The fans are super into it. A lot of guys very quickly became fan favorites there, and it's really neat to see. To see the fan base so engaged, to see that stadium, packed with people rooting them on. So it's been a very fun postseason this year.
Yeah, I mean, the Poldarowski, picking from the Pacific Division, you get Poldarowski from San Diego, you get Nason from the Barracuda, and then you get Lyon from Lehigh Valley, and just getting these veteran pieces and just building a contender in the offseason after Nashville's prospects said, all right, we're going to go to Milwaukee now. So
we're going home.
We're going home. Luke Evangelista's like, I got to go back to the OHL. These CHL rules. So I don't know why Luke Evangelista sounds like a 65-year-old man. But,
he might. You never know. I've never talked to him. He could.
This is very true. But Sarah, thank you so much for coming on the show again. Really appreciate it. If and when Chicago makes it to the Calder Cup finals, of course, we'll have you back on. Please tell the people where to find you on social media and where to find your podcast work, your written work, all the good work that you do for minor league hockey.
Awesome. So you can find me on Twitter at Write Said Sarah. It's WRITE said Sarah with an H. If you are, for some reason, feel like being interested in the Kings or the Reign, you can find Locked On Kings wherever you get your podcasts, also on YouTube, on Twitter at Locked On LA Kings. I host the Wednesday or co-host the Wednesday edition of Locked On NHL, our national show podcast where I focus on the Western Conference. Lately, we have been making fun of Mike Smith. So, come listen to that again, wherever you get your podcasts or YouTube. Most of my Wolves tweeting is on my Twitter, but if you want to read the articles, you can find Canes Country. I think it's just canescountry.com, also on Twitter at Canes Country. And you can usually every other game or so, we'll have a Wolves game recap and have been doing series previews before each of the series. So with any luck, we'll have one more series preview coming at you.
There you go. Sarah, do you have any free time?
No. I have a cat I need to go feed after this, and then I have guinea pigs downstairs that I need to go feed. So no.
It's work, hockey work, feed the animals, maybe throw a D&D campaign in there once a week.
Sleep a little bit.
Yeah, especially during playoff season. You're like, all right, got to cover every game. So
exactly.
Sarah Avampato, thank you so much again for coming on the show, and we'll see you soon, probably, hopefully.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. That is it for the show. Thank you so much for Blain Potvin and Sarah Avampato for joining the program in lieu of Sean and doing a great job at recapping thus far the 3 games played in both the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference final. Thank you all for watching and or listening. The Calder Farmstead is part of the Full Press Radio Network. You can listen to this and several other great hockey, sports, and sports entertainment programs, or pro wrestling if you prefer, at fullpresscoverage.com. Just click on the podcast drop-down menu in the top right portion of the website. That's the sound of the list populating, of course, and enjoy. And of course, we appreciate with all the great hockey and otherwise great programming out there in podcast land that you choose to tune in to the Calder Farmstead AHL podcast. We appreciate it. And if you guys are enjoying the Calder Farmstead, please make sure to subscribe so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon, or wherever you're listening to us from that allows you to, please rate and review the podcast. Or if you're watching it on YouTube, like the video, comment, subscribe, tell us what you thought of the episode. We've got thick skin, so let us know. Doing so helps others find the show, and your reviews help us improve it. We are not above constructive criticism. You can also follow the show on social media at Calder Farmstead on Twitter, at The Calder Farmstead on Instagram and Facebook. Links to all of that and more can be found at our link tree, which I forgot to get the ticker going here on YouTube. There we go. Finishing strong because I think I forgot that ticker for the majority of the program. But yeah, the ticker below, if you could see it, you could read it. linktr.ee/The Calder Farmstead. All of our links are there. Big thanks to Adrian Drank, who made our theme music. You can find him on social media at AD, that is Alpha Delta _dysfunction. That is DYSFUNCTION. So he can make music for you too. As you can tell, I'm not used to spelling that out. My name is CC Hockley. You can find me representing Full Press Hockey on Twitter at FPC_AHL and at my personal Twitter account at CCHawk. That's SEESEEHAWK. Mainly hockey tweets coming from there, but music, movies, pop culture, and of course, my daily Wordle scores. If it keeps me interested, hopefully it's not going to be bullshit for you. Check out my writing on the Full Press Coverage Network at www.fullpresshockey.com. That will do it for episode number 105 of the Calder Farmstead AHL podcast. Once again, my name is Cece. Thank you so much for tuning in. Sean will be back. For episode number 106, and it will probably be after the Eastern and Western Conference Finals have concluded. So, once again, thank you for tuning into the show, rather. And as always, keep your stick on the ice.